Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking about tools, sewing tools. So I have bought a lot of tools over the years, and yeah, I keep buying tools. I'm always looking for tools, looking for the best tools, trying out a lot of tools, but a lot of the tools that I have I don't use, but the ones that I do use, I use them a lot, like a lot. So I thought today I am just going to show you the tools that I use all the time without fail, almost every single project, and a few things that I don't use for every project, but they have literally changed the way that I sew. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about are cutting tools. I'm going to go straight into the cutting tools because, as you can probably see behind me, I have like 37 scissors. Yeah, I collect scissors. I've been collecting scissors for years. I'm a little bit obsessed with them when it comes to finding the right cutting tools, and whenever my boyfriend walks around the house going, "Babe, I need a pair of scissors," I literally have to stand in front of my room and be like, "Don't you dare touch my scissors," because yeah, he will just pick up any scissor, and that's not how it works. Each scissor has a role and a purpose, and if you touch them, so yeah, that's pretty much what happens in this household, and he has learned his lesson. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys are like that about your scissors as well, when like your significant other's like, "Can I just cut that?" and you're like, you know, yeah, I'm like that as well. So he knows better than to ask for my scissors, and now if he does need a pair of scissors, he comes to me first and goes, "I need a pair of scissors to cut this," and I will go and get him the suitable scissors for that. So yeah, but onto the cutting tools. I have a lot of them. I've tried out a whole bunch of different things, and these are my favorites. These are ones that I pick up and I go to every single project. So I've got them all laid out here next to me, so I'm gonna pick them up, and we're gonna go first with the rotary cutters. Now, these I wasn't using for the longest time, and I don't even know why, because these are amazing. These have really elevated my sewing projects. Every time I used to cut, because I used to cut on the floor, and I still cut on the floor now, but I used to cut on the floor downstairs in our old house, which was like a flat, hard floor. So it wasn't that bad, but then I switched to another place, and I had a carpeted floor, which makes it a lot like difficult to like cut things, because you know, when the floor's carpeted, you're like always digging into the floor. It's not great, okay? It's not great. If you're gonna cut on the floor, you wanna do it on a hardwood floor. So these rotary cutters really kind of like saved me. I have my cutting mat. I'm able to put things down. It glides through fabrics with precision. I can go through curves. Anything that needs cutting, I can just be like, and it's done, and the lines are clean. So really enjoy using these. And because I've got multiple packs of blades, I have a blade pack for cutting paper. I also have a blade pack for cutting fabric for both of these, so I can interchange them. If I need to do a lot of cutting out of patterns, I've taped up a pattern or something and I need to cut it out, then this is much quicker than using any scissors. So yeah, I'm really happy with these, and I would recommend anybody, beginner, advanced, whatever, to get with the program and get with these, because you will find that you do a lot of cutting, and this will like shave down that cutting out pattern time. If you just put this, you'll be done in no time. So those are my favorite things to cut. But when you're actually sewing a project, you can't always be using a rotary cutter to snip off those edges. So for those, I use these. But these are my current favorites. I picked these up when I was in China, and they are so sharp. I have cut myself way too many times with these. They should come with a warning. I think they actually do, because they're scissors, but like, yeah, very sharp. But I also really like how big the loops are, so it doesn't matter how big your hands are, you can still cut. It feels very it's a really weird feeling, what I'm gonna say. Like when you cut something, sometimes it feels like a meaty cut. I don't know if that sounds weird, but when I cut things with that, it feels substantial. Even if it's just a little thread, though I think it's been tightened so that you can feel the friction of the blades, and I really like that. It just feels very, it feels like it's really cutting things. And yeah, I've noticed with other scissors where you don't feel that at all, and I find that the cut is blunter, so I really enjoy these. And again, super sharp, so these are my favorite like snips, and these pretty much live right next door to my sewing machine. Another thing that I also use if I do have to cut something are these. Now these are my latest scissors, my most recent scissors to my 36 strong scissor collection. These are from Fiskars, and they're just like your normal standard dressmaking scissors. They are exceptionally sharp, and they also have that nice meaty feel when you cut into them. These are my fabric scissors. I do not use these for anything other than cutting fabric. Like it's very, very nice, and they're very, very sharp, so you get a really, really clean line. So I really enjoy using these if I'm not using my rotary cutters, but it's very rare that I'm not using my rotary cutters, but if for some reason I have to use scissors, then I'm using these. I have a bunch of other cutting tools which I do use, but not as often. One of them would be the craft blade. I have these in different sizes, and these I usually use for like other like crafting projects, things that might not be sewing. They're also really, really good as a substitute for a seam ripper. So is the rotary cutter. I find that if you've got a seam ripper, you can rip those seams if you make mistakes, but I also find it's a lot cleaner if you just use a thin blade. I find that it's a lot cleaner if you have like this thin blade that you can retract, and what you can do is kind of pull the seam open, put the blade in, and then all done. And you can do the exact same thing with a rotary cutter. So I find that I use my seam ripper less and less because I've already got a rotary cutter and I've also got a bunch of craft blades. So if any of them dull, then I probably would then go to the seam ripper. So those are my cutting tools. So if you make a lot of patterns like I do, then you're always probably on the lookout for a good ruler. I have a ton of rulers, a lot of them which I actually picked up from my old job. My current favorite, and this changes, but at the moment, for at least the last year, my current favorite has been this clear ruler by Fiskars. Now, I seem to really, really like the Fiskars brand. I find that their products are very well made and they last a really long time. They're like really workhorse like type tools. You can like use them over and over again. Like my scissors, I use them all the time, not even close to being blunt. So great stuff. So this is my favorite ruler at the moment, and I'll tell you why. I really like that it is clear. I also like that it's in inches, but it's also in centimeters. So like it works really, really well. This is really good for people who do quilting as well. They have a square version of the same thing, and they also have a triangle version, but for me, this one really, really works. It's like, what, 18 inches by 3 inches. So it also really works for like going around corners because the measurements are on both sides, are on all sides, and then have these lines that go across, which are about 1/4 inch in length. So you can pretty much measure whatever you need to measure just on here. This is my current favorite one. If I was to say what the one I was using before was, I have a Pattern Master. I don't actually have its hand at the moment, but I will show you in a picture here what it looks like. Pattern Masters are basically like 3 different rulers in one ruler. Now, if you went to fashion school, if you do anything like that, you will probably have that on your recommended items list that you will use over and over again. It's because it has a straight side with a right angles, and then the top side is a sloping curve, or a hip curve basically, and then on the inside it has a hole which is like an armhole curve. So you are able to basically create a pattern using all the different parts of the ruler of just one ruler instead of using 3 different rulers. All the measurements change over there, so like depending on what you need it for, you can just use that one ruler, which is really, really good. And when I went to fashion school, I used it every single day. But when I'm at home, I don't really use it as much because I actually don't know where it is, but I was using it almost every single day before I got this one. So those are my favorite rulers. I'm gonna make a confession. I'm an impatient sewer and I'm a lazy sewer. And I don't know if that's a good thing for me to admit to you guys when I'm trying to teach you things, but I'll be honest, like, you know, when I'm sewing for myself, I care about more of what the outside looks like than what the inside looks like. So if I make any mistakes that are on the inside and people are not gonna see, I don't really care too much. Unless it's something that I know people might see, like a jacket that I'm gonna take off. Those are the things that I might take a lot more care on the inside. But if it's a dress, like, I'm the only one that's gonna see the inside of that dress, unless, you know, you're there when I'm taking it off, and there's only one person who's ever there when I'm doing something like that, so it doesn't matter if he sees it too. So, you know, like things like that doesn't matter so much to me, and because of that, over the years I've become a little bit lazy when it comes to marking things, because I just don't have time. I'm an impatient person when it comes to making clothes. Normally when I start making a project, I get really, really excited about it, and I just want to get it done already. So when it comes to the most tedious part of sewing, in my opinion, which is making the pattern, cutting out the pattern, marking things, I tend to just bypass all of that. Unless I look at what needs to be marked, and the most important things get marked down, but all the other little dots and notches, yeah, no, it doesn't happen. Is that really bad to say? Probably really bad. That being said, when I do have to do marking and I have to draw things on fabric and just to make sure placement is right, there are marking tools that I always use. So I've got these marking tools here, and I pretty much use these every time I can be bothered to do any kind of marking. Not that I'm saying don't do marking. If you're a beginner, mark everything until you get to a place where you don't feel that you need to mark it, and then do what you like. But you know, and I did that for the longest time. I would do all the marking, and then I got to a point where I was like, actually, I feel like I know what I'm doing now. I can eyeball things. So, you know, when you get to the stage where you can start eyeballing things, then you can. But in the meantime, these are the things that I use. So this is a chalk pen. It is basically a pen that kind of looks like a biro. It's got a chalk cartridge in it, like this. So what you would do is squeeze the bottom, put the chalk in like this, and then when you let it go, it looks like a pen, and you can draw with it on any fabric. Now, I have a lot of different colored chalks for different colored fabrics, but I mostly use the white, and I only really use that on dark fabrics or on like denims, like just dark fabrics this works the best on. A lot of people use, like, you know, those chalk markers, but I prefer the pen because it means that if I need to write something on it, I can do that too. And then the other things that I use here are these markers. This one is a washable marker, so I can draw all over my fabric, and then when I wash it, it will disappear, it will wash out. And then these two are air erasable ones, so I can draw all over my fabric, and then eventually they'll just fade into the air and they'll fade away. So these are actually all pretty good for marking light colored fabrics because it's pink, it's purple, and it's this kind of blue. They show up really, really well. And then for the dark fabrics, I will use the chalk. So these are really, really handy. I would say everyone should have some sort of like marker that you can use that washes away or disappears over time. That way, if you do make any mistakes, you're not using like a biro or something like that, because they will not come out, or you might do something to stain your fabric, and that's the last thing you want to do, especially if you make it and it's perfect and then you've got like all these marks on it that you can't get off. So those are the things that I would definitely use if I wasn't so lazy. Okay, so a couple more things. So another thing that I use almost every single project, and you guys have seen me use this over and over again, is my tracing wheel. This tracing wheel is the bomb. Honestly, I have not found a better tracing wheel than this, but I stopped looking as soon as I had this. There might be a better one out there, but this one is really, really good. As you can see, these prongs are like really, really, really sharp. You can really, really hurt something or someone with these, and because the prongs are so long, it doesn't matter how thick your fabric is, if you push down hard enough, it will push through. So that is really, really good, and I really, really enjoy using these, and you'll see me using these in every single pattern making section of all my tutorials, because this is what I use to trace around my currently existing clothes. So the next two items that I use them pretty much almost every project, depending on what kind of fabric it is one that everybody uses, and I recommend everybody use. It is the pin and the clip. One pin does not fit all fabrics. Sometimes your pin is too thin, sometimes your pin is too thick. I have a lot of different types of pins depending on the fabric, but the one type of pin that I've been able to use for like most fabrics is this one by Prim. These are the yellow glass headed, and they're quite long. I don't remember the exact measurements, but I will link all of the things in the description bar below. These pins go through most things. I do have to change when it comes to silk and laces and those thinner type fabrics like the micro tex and things like that, but it goes through most of the thick things, most cottons, most wools, most things like that. Viscose, it will pin them no problem. The other thing that I really, really like is this magnetic pin cushion, which I would recommend to everyone. Maybe not this one, there's loads of different ones out there, but having a magnet on hand really, really helps with when all those pins start to kind of go everywhere. It also means when you're pulling pins out while sewing, instead of just putting them on the table where they can scatter, you have a pin cushion that can just straight up. So the only thing I don't really like about these pin cushions is that the magnet in them is actually quite small, so they all kind of sit in the center when the actual covering for it is really big. So I would love for it to be the actual whole covering, but realistically it's only like the center. So yeah, they all sit in the center, and if they go out towards the edge, it's not as magnetic, but still very, very useful, because once you have a project that's finished, especially if you're working on the floor, you can just hold it upside down and just pick up all those pins, no accidents. Because I've had a few of those accidents where I've had a pin through the foot. I had one where I had a pin like all the way into my heel, and I felt it like in my soul. It was horrible. Having to pull that out, it was like pulling it out from like my soul. It really, really hurts. Pins with magnetic pin cushions are a winner. Now, the reason why I say glass head pins is because I like to iron and press as you go. Sometimes you might need to iron something, but it needs to be held together to another part of the garment, and if you do that with something that has a plastic head, then the plastic will melt. And I've done that a few times early on in my sewing career and made a real mess of my iron, my ironing board, and the project that I was working on. So I started getting the ones with the glass on top because you can iron over them and absolutely nothing happens. So pin your fabric, do whatever you need to do. If you need to fold over, like maybe if you're folding over a hem on a fabric that doesn't seem to want to stay down, you can fold it over, you can pin it down, and then you can iron it into shape, and everything works fine. Like the glass, it doesn't even get that hot, so like it's great. So I really enjoy using the glass head pins, and I actually I didn't get rid of all my plastic headed ones. I just don't use them. I have them in a separate little jar which I use like for emergencies, but that's really it. The other thing that I would really highly recommend, which I only started using in this last year, which is crazy when I think about how many projects I actually needed this like really bad, are clips. So these are like craft clips. You can get them from Amazon, you can get them from most craft shops now, and I think it's because I didn't see them in craft shops when I was looking for them, but they're quite popular to get them now. And they're basically these tiny little clips that you can like hold pieces of fabric together, and you can use them instead of pins. So these work really well when you're working with items that you can't put a pin in, such as leather or suede, or maybe like a faux fur, something that's really bulky. You can just pin it together. You can use it on slippery fabrics. It will just keep them in and pin, like, because sometimes pins might fall out. These are not falling off, they're just clipped on, and because there's a lot of pressure, it will stay there until you unclip it. So these are really good, and I have quite a lot of these. I bought you get like a bag of 100 for like £2 or £3 on Amazon. Really good deal. I will link down below where I got mine from, and I'm always topping up because like I find that I use them more and more, and they're slowly replacing me using pins. So I would highly recommend that as a great thing for any beginners toolkit, any advanced toolkit. Yeah, for you beginners out there, get yourself some of these. You will probably wonder why you even tried using pins to begin with, because that's just so easy. So those are basically the main things that I use for almost every single project. There are obviously some other things, but those are the things that are like literally I'm reaching to. If I don't have at least one version of all these things next to me when I'm sewing, then the project is probably not happening, and I'll get really frustrated. But some things that have really elevated my sewing, even though I don't use them that often, are sewing feet. Now, I've been looking at sewing feet. I've had a few sewing feet. When you buy a sewing machine, they give you more than one foot. They give you like a zipper foot, you've got like the normal foot, and there's usually like another foot, which I never actually knew what that one did. But like it might be just for some of the other stitches that you might have in your machine. What I didn't realize for the longest time is that there are like hundreds of other feet, and I was just like, wow, there is a lot. So over the years, I've been collecting these different feet and finding which ones I use. And about 2 years ago, I went on Amazon and I bought a kit that had 32 different sewing feet in the pack, and they all did different things, and I was like, I want to learn how to use every single one of them. I have not even got halfway through these kits because some of them I'm just like, I don't even know what that is. When you look at the description, you're like, what even does that description mean? Like, what is that? It's really funny because like I've got the I kept the front bit of the box because it's got all the feet on it and then all their descriptions of what they do, and there's one here that just says jaguar. Like, jaguar. I don't even know what that means. Like, what is a jaguar? Why is it a foot? Like, how do I use it? Do I do it to sew jaguars? Will I turn into a jaguar? I have no idea. So I'm working through this, and luckily YouTube has been a great help in teaching me how to use all these really random sewing feet. But out of those sewing feet, I actually have some that have completely changed the way I sew. And as we know, I'm an impatient sewer, so anything that makes my life easier or makes things faster is good with me. So the first sewing foot that I use is this one. Now this is a 1/4 inch foot. Now I live in the UK, so we work with the metric system, but all sewing patterns and all sewing machines seem to work with the imperial system. So when you look on the sewing gauge at the front, when you're trying to make sure it's at the right side for the seam allowances, it says 5/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch. It says all these things. It doesn't say 1.5 centimeters, 6 millimeters. It doesn't say any of that. So when you're in the UK, you kind of have to convert them in your head, or you just use the the same measurements that every other thing is. So it's really weird because in my life in the UK, I use metric for almost everything apart from when I'm sewing, and sometimes when I'm sewing I might switch between metric and imperial. It gets very confusing, and I know that in some of my tutorials I might even switch in the middle. It gets very confusing. I get confused myself. So a lot of patterns, it will ask you to do a 1/4 inch. That's like the one thing that is not marked on my sewing machine. I've got like 1/8, and then I've got 3/4 of an inch, and then I've got 5/8 of an inch, and then half. And I'm just like, okay, but where's the 1/4 button? So instead of me having to sit there and measure and then maybe tape it, there's this foot. And what this foot has is a little barrier, which you make sure that the fabric lines up with that barrier, and then every single seam that you sew, as long as the fabric butts up against that barrier, a perfect 1/4 inch seam. So really happy with that, because there are a surprising amount of patterns that ask for 1/4 inch seams. So this helps, and it means that I don't have to sit there like trying to get it, or I don't come up with a seam that's like 1/4 inch for a bit and then it goes to 3/8 of an inch and it's a bit wonky. This gives me perfect every single time. Really happy with that. These two are the same, but one is bigger and one is smaller. These ones have literally saved me so much time, and for the longest time I didn't know what they were. I was looking through the list of my 32 random feet that I have, and I saw that there was a hemming foot. And I thought, a hemming foot, does that mean I can just hem with it? And that's exactly what it means. It means those tiny little rolled hems that you need to make on like delicate fabrics, when you need to have like when you're trying to turn under like chiffon, silk, or just even like a viscose, and you want like the narrowest hem, but you need to still fold over twice. It's really flimsy to do like by hand. A pin won't hold it, a clip's too large. These babies will just help you. So what you kind of need to do first is kind of like when you get to the edge of the fabric, you kind of like fold it over, and it has a little curve in it, and you feed it through. So once you feed the fabric through, it kind of turns it under and then goes under the needle. So essentially what's happening, it's being turned under twice and then it's being sewn down. So on the other side, you've got this perfect hem that is like uniform, and it's tiny, and it's beautiful. And yeah, it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky to get like that, to do your first one. So I would say practice a few times, and I practiced on a few scraps. But now every time I need a narrow hem, like when you're working with silk, or when I've got some viscose, or I've got like a little dress and I just want the tiniest hem, I pick up one of these, because it's just so easy. Once you know how to use it, it is literally going to be your best friend, and it just takes the hassle out of all of that fiddling around with tiny little hems. So I cannot recommend these enough. And there's one, I think there's one that makes it easier if you're sewing something round as well, and it will hem it too, which is even better. I haven't used that one yet, but seriously guys, if you have one, then you should try it. And if you don't have one, you can order them, and they're really cheap for the fee, like £5, like at $8 or something like that, and you can have this. So I promise you, if you don't have one, then you should go get yourself one. And if you do have one, then, you know, get on YouTube, look at a few tutorials. I'll even link a few that I used underneath, and get yourself sewing with these, because these will really save you so much time once you get the hang out of it. So that is it guys. Thank you guys for watching the end of this video. I just showed you all the tools that I use literally for every project that I start with. They always start with these tools, and also a few things that I use that make my sewing a lot better. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, then like this video, send me a comment, let me know what kind of tools you use. Is there anything you think I should try? Maybe you've tried these same tools, you had different results, let me know. And if you haven't already, then subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.